This feels different. Not louder, not flashier, different. The kind of different you notice in your gut before you can explain it. One minute it's another Trump headline, another clip, another comment that would have ended any other political career. And then you realize people aren't just arguing online anymore. They're marching, they're organizing. Leaders who used to tiptoe are suddenly speaking plainly. And the shift isn't subtle. What we're watching right now isn't random outrage. It's coordinated unease. From North America to Europe, there's a growing sense that the old rules, the ones everyone pretended were unbreakable, are being tested in real time. And once people start believing that the guardrails might actually fail, things move fast. Let's start with something most people overlook. Protests don't usually spill across borders unless the fear itself is global. People don't take to the streets in multiple countries because of one speech or one post. They do it when they feel leaders might not step in soon enough or strongly enough to stop something bigger from taking shape. History backs that up, even when we wish it didn't. In my view, that's the context everyone keeps missing. This isn't about whether you like or dislike Donald Trump. It's about what his style of politics normalizes when it goes unchecked. Public threats, casual talk about borders, dismissing international law as if it's optional. Even floating ideas that used to be unthinkable, then acting shocked when people take them seriously. Here's where things get interesting. When Trump is challenged, he doesn't slow down, he doubles down. That pattern has been consistent for years. Criticism doesn't lead to reflection. It leads to escalation. Sharper language, bigger threats, wider targets. And from the reactions I've seen, that's exactly what's fueling the current wave of protests. You hear it in the chants. You see it in the signs. This isn't partisan messaging. It's anxiety. Fear that intimidation is replacing diplomacy, and that force is being treated like a negotiating tool instead of a last resort. And once that fear sets in, it spreads quickly. Now, let's talk about Canada, because this is where the story takes a turn that a lot of people didn't expect. For years, Canada's instinct on volatile global politics was restraint. Stay measured. Don't provoke. Let bigger players clash while Ottawa keeps its head down. That approach worked when the system itself felt stable. But here's the part most people misunderstand. Restraint only works when everyone agrees on the rules. When instability starts coming from the very top of the global order, staying quiet can look less like diplomacy and more like permission. That's why you're seeing Canada spoken about differently right now.
What is Donald Trump doing? Well, Donald Trump has ordered, according to the Daily Mail, he's officially ordered special forces commanders in the United States military to draw up a plan for the invasion of Greenland. This is getting serious and very specific. He's made an order about an invasion of Greenland, which could be imminent. Now, the one thing holding it back is that senior military figures, according to the Daily Mail, believe that such an invasion would destroy NATO, would be unlawful. Donald Trump doesn't care and seems that he's more interested in destroying NATO right there. Now, in response, what we're also learning, as GB reports, that the United Kingdom may be sending troops into Greenland in order to call Donald Trump's bluff after Donald Trump's takeover threats. So this article goes on to talk about how the UK, along with its European allies, are saying, well, why don't we just put our troops there and say, look, we are doing a NATO surge in Greenland, call Donald Trump's bluff, prove that it's not about security against Russia or China in Greenland, because Greenland would already be protected by the NATO alliance.
Especially in political commentary and international analysis. Not as a loud agitator, but as a coordinator. A country trying to line people up before things spiral, rather than reacting after the damage is done. A lot of commentators have pointed to the influence of figures like Mark Carney in shaping that thinking, not as an elected leader, but as a globally respected voice who understands how economic pressure, political legitimacy, and international alliances actually work. Carney's background, running major central banks during crises, matters here. His entire career has been about what happens when systems lose credibility and how fast confidence can collapse once fear takes over. That perspective has quietly shaped conversations behind closed doors, according to multiple analysts. The argument is simple but uncomfortable. Silence invites escalation. When threats go unanswered, they don't fade. They evolve. That's where Europe enters the picture. Leaders like Emmanuel Macron didn't suddenly decide to speak more bluntly for no reason. There's been a noticeable shift in tone over the past year, especially when it comes to rhetoric about borders, sovereignty, and alliances. Macron has openly warned that casual talk of annexation or forced realignment undermines the entire rules-based order Europe depends on. That warning didn't come out of nowhere. It reflects growing concern that what starts as rhetoric can quickly harden into expectation, and once expectations change, miscalculations become far more likely. Now here's the twist. While headlines bounce from one Trump statement to the next, the more consequential moves are happening quietly. Diplomatic signals, economic positioning, strategic relationships being reevaluated. There's been a lot of discussion, for example, about Canada expanding its global engagement beyond its traditional lanes, not abandoning allies, but diversifying leverage. And yes, that includes conversations with China, something that would have been politically unthinkable not long ago without triggering panic. To be clear, this isn't about choosing sides, it's about options. In global politics, the most vulnerable position is dependence without alternatives. When trade, energy, or supply chains can be weaponized, independence becomes a form of defense. Some analysts point to electric vehicles as a perfect example. Chinese EVs are cheaper, increasingly competitive, and already reshaping global markets. The United States has worked hard to keep them out, largely to protect domestic manufacturers and jobs. If countries close to the U.S. market begin opening doors, even cautiously, it changes the pressure dynamics overnight. Here's why that matters. Economic leverage doesn't need to be used to be effective. It just needs to exist. The moment a country shows it has credible alternatives, tariffs lose impact, threats lose urgency, intimidation starts to fail. And that's what seems to unsettle Trump the most, at least from a strategic standpoint. Not insults, not protests, but calm, coordinated moves that make his usual pressure tactics less effective.
So now is America going to war with Iran? Because that was what your threat was. If they kill the protesters, they're killing the protesters. So now what? So now you go to war with Greenland, you go to war with Iran. You go to war with Venezuela, which you call a legal operation, which is ridiculous. You threaten wars with Cuba, Colombia. You threaten to bomb Mexico, and that's why they're protesting there. I mean, what the hell? The hell is even going on right now?
Now, about Greenland, because this keeps coming up and it's worth slowing down here. Trump's past comments about Greenland weren't just jokes, no matter how often they were framed that way after the backlash. They signaled a worldview where territorial acquisition could still be discussed casually. Even when no formal action follows, the signal itself matters. Recent tabloid reports and online speculation have taken that rhetoric and run far ahead of verified facts, talking about military planning and imminent action. It's important to say this clearly. There's no confirmed evidence of invasion orders or imminent military operations. What there is, however, is widespread concern about the normalization of that kind of talk. And from a NATO perspective, that concern is existential. Even hypothetical discussions about force between allies strain trust. Senior military and diplomatic figures have repeatedly warned that such scenarios would fracture alliances and undermine international law. Those warnings aren't political theater. They're about preventing missteps that can't be undone. This is where the protests, the European pushback, and Canada's evolving posture connect. They're not isolated reactions. They're the immune response of a system under stress. When institutions sense danger, they activate defenses, public pressure, diplomatic alignment, economic repositioning. Trump, in my view, thrives when that system is fragmented. When leaders panic, scramble, or try to appease him individually, chaos is his element. Coordination is not. What he struggles with is legitimacy-backed resistance. Calm, legal, multilateral. The kind that doesn't shout but doesn't flinch either. That's why you're seeing less theatrical outrage from some leaders and more quiet coalition building instead. No insults, no chest thumping, just moves that make escalation harder and less rewarding. And that's also why the protests matter so much. They're not demanding specific policies, they're drawing boundaries, saying, collectively, that certain lines shouldn't be crossed, even rhetorically. This isn't the end of the story. If anything, it feels like the opening phase of something longer. Whether that leads to de-escalation or further confrontation depends on whether these alliances hold and whether intimidation continues to lose its effectiveness. In moments like this, leadership doesn't look like dominance. It looks like containment, slowing things down, keeping options open, preventing panic from becoming policy. If you value calm, clear analysis when global politics starts feeling chaotic and dangerous, consider subscribing. I appreciate you being here, and I want to hear from you. With protests growing, Europe pushing back more openly, and countries like Canada exploring broader leverage, do you think the world is finally drawing a line, or are we just at the beginning of a much bigger shift? Let me know in the comments. I read them all, and I'll see you next time.